Welcome back to the Crypto World channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, this new Bitcoin signal just confirmed on the chart, but the Bitcoin ETFs are still buying a lot of Bitcoin, while the price is now bouncing from critical short-term support, and the price also just hit this important area of liquidity. So I'll be talking about all of that and more in just a moment, so definitely stick around. First of all, we need to take a look at the Bitcoin ETF news today because we now have the new numbers coming in from Friday, which basically shows us on Friday the Bitcoin ETFs had a net inflow of around 230 million US dollars. Because as we can see here in the data from BitMEX research, once again, the Bitcoin ETFs just on Friday had a net inflow of 232 million US dollars approximately, and that factors in all of the inflows and outflows on that day. And once again, pretty much the only outflows from all of the ETFs are solely coming from Grayscale due to their very high fees. And right now, we're still seeing a lot of inflows going into other Bitcoin ETFs. And so obviously, if this continues, if we continue to see more and more net inflows, that's technically bullish for the price of Bitcoin, especially if we see significant net inflows like what we were seeing just last week. But of course, over the weekend, the US stock market is closed, which means the Bitcoin ETFs will not be trading over the weekend, which basically means we don't have any new inflows or outflows from the Bitcoin ETFs on the weekend. And so usually on the weekend, we see relatively boring price action, nothing too significant, but perhaps next week when the ETFs begin trading again, we could end up seeing another significant move if we're seeing significant moves in the ETFs, like for example, significant inflows or outflows. And so as always, I'll make sure to keep you updated in real time over on my Twitter and every day here on the YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe to this channel with notifications turned on so that you don't miss out on any of these important update videos. But anyway, getting into the Bitcoin charts today, this is on the weekly time frame, and right now, as I've been saying this entire time, we're still extremely bullish on the weekly Bitcoin chart on the larger time frames. But obviously, during this larger bullish trend, we can see short-term pullbacks here and there, so just keep that in mind. But once again, in terms of the larger trend at play, I'm still very bullish, and this golden pocket should still be acting as support, sitting in between around 48,000 to 50,000. And if we're taking a look at the 3-day Bitcoin chart, once again, as I've been saying recently on the channel, we already played out that volatile move to the upside exactly as expected, and we're now cooling off from that volatile move exactly as expected. And what I continue to expect, at least over this weekend, is a continued sideways consolidation, most likely, basically a continued cool off from all of that bullish price action. But ultimately, after we end up seeing more of a short-term cool off play out, either some sideways price action or perhaps a short-term pullback, ultimately after that sort of plays out, we should see the continuation of this bullish trend. So once again, in terms of the larger trend at play, I'm still very bullish. It's just right now we're taking a bit of a short-term pause from that larger bullish trend. And if we're taking a look at the daily time frame, obviously right now we've now confirmed the bearish cross here in the daily Bitcoin MACD, which technically speaking is a bearish signal, at least in the shorter term, because if we're taking a look at the last few times this has happened, of course, this has resulted in a little bit more bearish momentum, especially this last time that it happened. But the time before that, we saw a bearish cross around the 12th of December. And if we're looking at that stage in the market in the Bitcoin price right here, we did end up seeing a slight short-term pullback, but honestly, mostly choppy sideways price action over the next few weeks. And then ultimately, we saw the continuation of that bullish trend later on before the next bearish cross, which is where, once again, we saw that short-term pullback. But once again, that was only a short-term pullback before eventually the continuation of the larger bullish trend. And at least over the weekend, we're most likely going to see this short-term cool-off continue to play out, mostly in the form of choppy sideways price action. And then eventually, we're likely going to see the continuation of this larger bullish trend later on. And in fact, the more this sideways consolidation continues, or if we see a short-term pullback, the more of that we see in the short term, that basically cools off this RSI further back down towards more neutral levels. And in that case, if we're continuing to see this short-term cool-off play out in the price of Bitcoin, that is once again helping to reset the RSI, which gives us more room to the upside later on. And if we're taking a look at the 4-hour Bitcoin chart, once again, this short-term bearish divergence is still playing out, mostly in the form of choppy sideways price action, which is one of the most common outcomes from a bearish divergence. Because once again, as I've been saying basically every day here on the channel since all the way back here, I've been expecting either choppy sideways price action or potentially a slight short-term pullback in the price of Bitcoin as the most likely outcomes from this bearish divergence. And once again, perhaps over the rest of this weekend, since the ETFs are are not trading over the weekend, we could continue to see this bearish divergence continue to play out over the weekend. But eventually, the RSI is going to have to reverse back to the upside. And so when the RSI on the 4-hour time frame starts breaking out into new higher lows and higher highs, basically reversing from bearish back to bullish, at that stage, we can start calling the invalidation of this bearish divergence, which means we could start continuing that larger bullish trend once we invalidate this bearish divergence. But ultimately, in order to start flipping much more bullish again, we would need to break above this level of resistance, which is sitting at roughly around 52,500. And we need to see confirmation above that level, like candle closes confirming above 52,500. But so far, the price of Bitcoin is perfectly respecting this area of support that I talked about over the last couple of days. And this area of support is sitting in between around 50.5K to 51K. And like I said in my last video, you can think of this area of support as where there's a lot of Bitcoin buyers. So basically, in this price range right here, there's a lot of people interested in buying up Bitcoin. And over the last day, that's pretty much exactly what we saw. Obviously, the Bitcoin price dipped into that area, and then the Bitcoin price got bought up. And so at least as of right now, while the price of Bitcoin is still in between this area of support and this level of resistance, we're still technically in a choppy sideways price range, looking relatively neutral, at least in the short term here. But if we end up seeing a confirmed break back below around 50,500, then in that case, we could drop at least down to this level of previous resistance, now acting as new support, sitting at around $50,000. And below that, we have this technical price target sitting at around 49K approximately. But obviously, for as long as we're holding above this support, we're still looking relatively neutral, at least for now. But if we see a confirmed breakout above around 52,500, then once again, that will just signal the continuation of this much larger bullish trend. But believe it or not, no matter if the price is breaking bullish or bearish, you can make money in either direction. And personally, I take trades just like that over on Bybit. So I'll make sure to leave a link to Bybit in the description down below and in the pinned comment. And if you use that link down below this video to make a Bybit account and deposit on that account, you can get up to a $30,000 deposit bonus, but only if you use that link down below this video. But for whatever reason, if you cannot access Bybit or if you cannot KYC on Bybit, there is also Bitflex, which is another crypto exchange similar to Bybit, but you don't need KYC for Bitflex. And also right now, there is that exclusive giveaway happening over at Bitflex. If you use the link down below this video, it'll take you to this page right here. And so if you're trading crypto anyway, or if you're preparing to take the next trade, you might as well get set up or ready to go on one of those exchanges using those links down below this video if you want to get those extra bonuses or enter that giveaway. But anyway, once again, right now the price of Bitcoin is still in this choppy sideways price range, but over the last one day, we exactly hit this area of liquidity that I talked about yesterday. And once again, a lot of that downside liquidity was sitting at around 50,500. And since my last video here on the channel talking about how the price of Bitcoin is most likely going to at least wick down towards around 50.5K, obviously we've seen exactly that with a candle wick in the price of Bitcoin down towards pretty much exactly 50.5K before bouncing back up. And so once again, it's definitely important to keep in mind these areas of liquidity on the Bitcoin liquidation heat map. And now that we've taken out a lot of that downside liquidity, we do have some upside liquidity to pay attention to. And as of right now, most of the liquidity to the upside, at least in the short term, is sitting at around 52.1K to 52.3K, with some liquidity sitting at around 53.1K. But with that being said, we did not take out all of that downside liquidity. We still have some downside liquidity sitting at around 50.4 to 50.5K approximately. And so just keep that in mind as well. Of course, we could still hit that level, but basically that's still inside this area of support as long as we don't see some major candle closes back below around 50,500. And just taking a quick look at the ETH to US dollar charts on the weekly time frame, right now we're still trading well above the golden pocket and clearly in a larger bullish trend on the weekly time frame. And so once again, as I've been saying basically this entire time, I'm still extremely bullish on the price of ETH on the larger timeframes in terms of the larger trend at play. But obviously, it's worth keeping in mind that even during a larger bullish trend, we can see short-term pullbacks and things like that from time to time during a larger bullish trend. And just in case we do end up seeing a short-term pullback, this golden pocket right here should act as significant support like what we saw back here in Q1 of 2022. And once again, this golden pocket is sitting in between around 2,500 to 2.7K. And if we're taking a look at the daily time frame, right now the price of ETH is still somewhat cooling off in the short term with mostly choppy sideways price action as we've seen over the last half a week or so. And as I've also been saying over the last half a week or so, we have lost some bullish momentum, at least in the short term here in the daily Ethereum MACD. And obviously since then, since losing some bullish momentum, once again, the price has slowed down all of that crazy bullish price action. But with that being said, we have not confirmed any massive bearish trend reversal or anything like that. So once again, in terms of the trend and momentum, we're still more bullish than bearish. It's just right now in the short term, we're cooling off a little bit. We're basically slowing down, which is helping to reset the RSI. And once again, it's actually healthy to see these short-term cool-offs during a bullish trend because once again, these short-term cool-offs can help to reset the RSI back down towards more neutral levels, which can give us more room to the upside later on after we play out a bit of a short-term cool-off. And one of the reasons as to why we've seen that short-term cool-off over the last half a week or so is, of course, this bearish divergence on the 8-hour time frame with higher highs confirmed in the price and lower highs confirmed in the RSI. And once again, the most common outcomes from a bearish divergence are usually either choppy sideways price action, if not a slight pullback, at least in the short term. And so far, we have mostly seen choppy sideways price action, which is one of the most common outcomes from a bearish divergence. And once again, potentially over the rest of this weekend, we should be seeing a relatively neutral price action, most likely some choppy sideways price action over the weekend. And then eventually, after we see this short-term cool-off play out, whether it's a little bit more choppy sideways price action or even a bit more of a slight pullback, either way, I do expect the eventual continuation of that larger bullish trend later on at some point. And if we're taking a quick look at the price of Solana on the 8-hour time frame, obviously right now and over the last one day, we have seen a bit of a bounce from that 50% retracement level, acting as support, sitting at around $99 to $100. And once again, as I mentioned all the way back here when we initially broke to the downside from this head and shoulders pattern, I said back then that I was entering a short position, trading this move to the downside. But like I said, over the last 2 days, I'm taking a lot of profits off the table at around $99 to $100, considering we have some important support right around there. And for the third day in a row now, I've actually taken a little bit more profits off the table at around $99 to $100, give or take. And so at this point, honestly, most of that short position, at least in my position, most of that short position is closed. And the remainder of that position is still open in case we continue further to the downside towards that technical price target, which is sitting close to $94. But if we start breaking out back above around $105 to $107, back above this previous golden pocket, then in that case, I'd look to close that short position altogether. But at least for now, in my situation, this short position is already a profitable trade, even in the worst case scenario, even if we break back out above this golden pocket, which would invalidate the break to the downside. Even in that scenario, this is already a profitable trade because once again, I've already taken a lot of profits off the table at around $99 to $100, closing a decent amount of that trade already. But if you missed this trade right here, do not worry, there's always more trading opportunities. And so make sure you subscribe to this channel with notifications turned on so that you don't miss out on any of these important update videos where I actually share some of the trades that I'm taking. And once again, if you want to actually take these trades for yourself, then you need to set up ready to go on an exchange. And once again, if you use the links down below this video on one of those exchanges, you can get those extra bonuses, but only if you use those links down below this video. And if you want to actually know how to take these trades, no matter if we're bullish or bearish or even chopping around sideways, you can profit from all of that price action by watching these videos popping up right here on your screen. The video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that's everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.